Good evening, this is Avraham Shira. Tonight we're going to discuss some amazing ideas about Tu B'Av, the ancient day when young men and women, single and looking to be married, would go out to the vineyards, all dressed in white, each wearing a simple garment so that none could distinguish between the rich and the poor, the landed and the servants, and all people would dance and sing. And it was a time when normal biblical modesty was violated, and that young men and women were able to approach each other and pursue to see if they had found their true other half. We still celebrate this day on the 15th of Av. And also, although some of the customs seem antiquated and the social milieu of 2,000 or 3,000 years ago has changed a little bit, there's a lot to learn according to the Kabbalah about this amazing custom of one trying to find his true other half on one night in the summer beneath the full moon. But first, let's go backwards in time to the first couple. The first couple who did not have to look for their other half too much. According to the tradition of the Kabbalah, Adam and Eve were the first human beings that were given a soul that enabled them to speak directly to God. A soul that was an upgrade in the software of the creation at that time. A soul that could recognize itself and others, and the fact that this world is so marvelous and miraculous that there must be some hidden living force driving its continuous renewal and creation. Now we know that the first man was neither male or female, but both. And their hermaphrodite status was part of the natural order of creation that began with the unity of the Creator and diverged and separated and re-separated until there was a world of infinite beings and creative entities. So Adam and Eve in the beginning were just Adam. When we refer to Adam in a biblical sense, we're talking about both the male and the female as one. Now, at a certain point, God commanded this creature, Adam, to give names to all the other created beings in the garden. Now, the giving of a name is not simply like finding a pet, and calling it something that's pleasant to you. The giving of a name is the extraction of the essence of a thing into language. Just as when Chava, Eve, was created, then Adam said, "She is basar mi basarim, etzem mi atzmi." She is the essence of my essence, the flesh of my flesh. And we know, according to the structure of the worlds, that what he was saying was that she was the essence of his essence, meaning the internal portion, the chelek hapnimi in Hebrew, the part of Adam that was most like the Creator, the part of Adam that could reproduce human beings. But when they were in the garden giving names, they were one being. It's an interesting thing to note. They would look at a lion, and of course it wasn't they then. It wasn't Siamese twins. But yet it was one mind of perception would look at a lion and extract the word aryeh for lion, and sus for horse, and tanin for crocodile, etc., etc. Now, it's interesting to note that after Adam and Eve were separated, that Chava was created as a separate entity, they were still living in a non-physical plane. They were living in a spiritual realm. Physicality as we know it did not yet exist. There was still image, there was still communication, there was still color, there was still consciousness. Much like what we would refer to as existing in heaven, which of course we say that they lived in the Garden of Eden before they were cast out, and being cast out of the Garden of Eden means being cast out of heaven and into the materialized physical world. But the Talmud tells us an amazing fact. It says that 10 portions of speech came down to the world, and women took 9 of them. Poor Adam only got 1/10 of the power of speech, and women took 9. Chava definitely knew how to talk. She had a lot more power to talk than Adam did. So when we look at the idea of the original male-female Adam giving names to things, which aspect of the soul was more responsible for the giving of that name, the male or the female? Well, it would certainly stand to reason that it was the female aspect, that the soul part that received 9 portions of speech was more involved in formulating the language that would reflect the essence of each created thing. So now, we start to put the puzzle together. After Adam and Eve did enter the physical realm, after the fall from grace, as we call it, after the fall from the eating of the tree of duality, the knowledge of good and evil, where there was no longer one perception of reality, there was you and me, us and them, God and me, and all these created constructs in consciousness. Once they fell into this world and they had that dual consciousness, their work was really cut out for them. But we know that Chava, Eve, she is the one who gave the names to her children. And if we look at the patriarchs, the majority of the names that were given to the great tribes, the sons of Jacob, were given by the wives. And if you look around today, I'll bet that you'll find that women are predominant when it comes to the naming of children. Now you might think that this is a small fact. And what does it have to do with Tu B'Av and finding our true other half? Well, we're on the way. Because when we isolate and understand that women have this power to give names, to extract the essence of things, because she is the essence of her husband, the internal quality, who makes the blessing every morning, Sha'asali K'Ratzono, that God made me like His will, which of course implies that Adam wasn't exactly like God's will. But that aside, we see that throughout the ages, women have been sharing a great portion of the spirit that gives names to children. And, there is a poetic aspect to this. Of course, because poetry itself, songs, are dependent to a great deal on the ability to give names to images. And of course that doesn't mean that there aren't many great male poets, because there are, But it might happen to be that those male poets have a very strong feminine aspect that helps enable them to extract the essence of things into words. Now, what does this have to do with Tu B'Av and finding your true other half? So to answer our question, how do we recognize our true other half? Which is perhaps the most important question every human being must face in his life. Not always, but I think you can understand the importance of this question because nobody gets married and wanting to divorce. And we can see the blight of divorce in our generation has reached epic proportions, shall we say. So how do we know? Well, let's tap back again to the tractate Kiddushin, marriages and marriage contracts from the Talmud. It tells us there that a man is obligated to go and find his wife. Abal Avedah Chozel Averato. That somebody who has lost something, the rabbis teach, he's the one that goes looking for it. You know, nobody goes looking for your keys or your phone except you. So they're using that statement, that very short, pithy statement, to describe the existential state of a man who's looking for his wife. He is looking for something he has lost. It's called a Baal Avedah. He's somebody who's lost something. And that's precisely the description of the soul when it splits in heaven and it comes down to this world as described in the book of reincarnation of Rabbi Chaim Vital, written over 500 years ago. That when the soul is split, every human being is born male, female, and then each soul part, the male and the female, have to go different directions to seek their portion of the repair of themselves in order to merit to find that true other half. Now the Talmud teaches us also that there are 10 levels of zivugim. There are 10 different mates that a person will potentially marry. And each of the first 9 depend on his deeds. The first one depends on his mazal, that is the other half of his soul. Because you can only have one other half, obviously. But the other 9 candidates to be a person's wife, a man's wife, will depend on the man's deeds. That if he has refined himself, then he will merit to a refined woman. And if he hasn't, well, he will receive exactly the partner that is on his level. Everything that God does is fair. If we don't abide by that general principle, then we're on the wrong planet. We have to believe that it's fair. And when you learn the Kabbalah and you learn the Hasidic masters' interpretations, then you see that it's really true. That everything is created with perfect balance and justice. And so the soul splits, and then a person is given the tests that he has in his life. If he passes those tests up until a young man's age, a young woman, then hopefully he'll merit to marry his true other half. But there are many, many instances when a person doesn't. In fact, the majority of people don't, according to Rabbi Chaim. And nowadays, it's probably safer to say that's even more so a true fact. Now, so the man, the person who has lost something, he's the one who goes out to find it. So how does a man know his true other half? There are amazing women out there of every class and quality and category that you can imagine. And all of them look good, and all of them have wonderful qualities, and all of them have something that attracts a person. So how do you know that she's the right one? The one that looks the prettiest, the one that has the most money, the one that has the most status. The rabbis say go for the one who has the best family, which is a very deep statement, and certainly in light of the state of the family in our generation, we can see how important that advice is. That we must check out a person's family when we're looking at the potential of marriage. Now, but this man, this poor guy, Adam, he's out there in the garden, he's looking for his other half, and suddenly he finds her. She's the essence of my essence. She's the flesh of my flesh. How does he know it? He hasn't touched her. He hasn't kissed her. I doubt they've had much of a conversation. Now you could say, well, she was the only one that even looked remotely like him. The rest of them were covered with fur and had horns and hooves. That would be an easy giveaway, right? Well, aside from that, we understand now that Adam only got 1/10 of the power of speech of his total master soul. And so when he's looking for his true other half, he's looking for that other half that has those other 9 portions of the speech that he did not receive. He is looking for the woman whose voice mashlim his own voice. The woman whose voice completes his speech. And the voice, of course, is an extraction of the mind. It's called das in Kabbalah, consciousness. And when you meet your other half, you feel whole. And when they talk, you feel their voice ring through you. And it's not how pretty or handsome or wealthy or talented they are. It's how their voice rings in the instrument of your soul and body. Oftentimes we call that chemistry, but maybe it's spiritual chemistry. And so when a person goes out on a date and he starts to talk to a woman, of course he needs to listen to what she's saying, and of course a woman needs to listen to what the man's saying, the content of what he's saying. But I'm sure most of you would probably agree with me that the content of what people say is less important than how their speech touches you, moves you, comforts you, enlightens you, inspires you, reaches out to you, makes you feel welcome, makes you feel at peace, makes you feel whole and at home again. So those are a lot of qualities, and I hope you don't take out your notebook on the next date checking out those qualities. It's going to take a lot of work. But we have to purify ourselves. Now, Rabbi Nachman always tells us before big events, like a date or giving over a Torah talk, we need to pray to God. We need to talk to God that these things should go well. That if this date is the right one for you, then it should go well. And if it's not the right one, well, let's not waste time and hurt anybody's feelings. Right? Let's move on like a gentleman, like a gentlewoman, with respect for the other person. But when we pray before a date, you will find that your voice will be purified and your hearing will be more purified. So, to take a look at it again, the secret of finding our true other half is the secret of finding that lost part of yourself. Now you could say, well, that's very nice, Avraham, but I don't always know that. It doesn't just happen as easily as it was for me to sit here and say these ideas. Now, of course, I've been refining and sifting these ideas for a long time before I could sit down and give this talk over. But the sense that you carry of faith in your Creator, in His desire that you marry the right one, in the Creator's love for all people. God does not want to see divorces. Sometimes they have to happen for many reasons. So we have to go with that idea of faith, that I will be led and I will be shown, and I will see what I need to see and experience what I need to experience in order to know if this person is right. But it begins with that voice. Now, I gave this class once over to a seminar, and the women in the group said, well, how do I know this is always true? I listen to, a singer sing his song, and I swoon, I fall in love. How many times has that happened in the history of rock and roll? Is that what we're talking about? Well, of course not. We're not talking about a person's ability to sing, to dramatize his words, to express himself with emotion that draws out your own emotion. Those are all external ideas to what we've been talking about tonight. The ideas that we're talking about tonight are much deeper than your ability to hold a tune, to hit a note, to carry a melody. And, of course, not to mention, not the ability to seduce anyone through the beauty of your God-given voice. So it has to really do with that being in touch with ourselves and knowing where I'm lacking. When I know where I'm lacking, I'll have a much greater chance of identifying that person that will fulfill where I lack. And if it goes well, then I will be able to fill where they lack as well. So these are ideas that are worthy of review, thinking about them, praying about them, and taking them into action on Tu B'Av. I'm sure people will be going out, perhaps with a little sparkle in their eye, on Tu B'Av, which is coming up on Wednesday. And remember, close your eyes. Listen to the person talk without looking at them. Listen to how they talk to others. Listen to how they talk on the phone. The differences might tell you a very big story, one that you need to hear. So I'm grateful to be able to have shared these ideas with you tonight, and I look forward to, with God's help, to be able to teach more of these ideas of the Kabbalah and the everyday tests and challenges that we face. We meet every day on Patreon, learning the magnum opus of Rabbi Nachman, Likutei Moharan. We've been at it for 1.5 years now, and we're not even halfway through, but we take it slow, word by word. We always have a Erev Shabbat talk. You can find a lot of shiurim on my YouTube channel and on avrahamshira.com. There are meditations, videos, other classes, some of the writings that we've published, found in all those outlets. So check them out. And if you feel like you have a question you really need to ask, something's burning inside, well, you can write me at avrahamshira.com, or I should say at gmail.com, and I will field the questions that I can, with Hashem's help, of course. So God bless all of you, that these difficult times we live in should be lifted from our consciousness on these days of joy that the Jewish history and custom has given us to lift us out of the difficulties, because we aren't the only generation that has faced very difficult things. And we are getting stronger every day, And every day that we turn to the Torah and we turn to Hashem, we will get even stronger. So God bless all of you, and Tu B'Shvat Sameach. Tu B'Av Sameach. All the best.